My name is Christian Novak, a representative of the Military Education Preservation Project, and I'm at the home of Luther Clearman on this day, July 28, 2020, talking to Mr. Clearman about his time in the service. Mr. Clearman, can you start by giving us some background information on yourself, starting with where you were born?
I was born in Houston County, Alabama, December 23rd, 1924.
And what did your parents do?
My father was a farmer and a builder. He could build a house and farm and whatever it took to make a living back in those Depression days, actually.
Mm-hmm. So you grew up around Dothan then?
Oh, yes.
Okay. How did you enter the service?
I joined the Army in, what was that, 20 something? I don't remember the date, but I joined.
So you enlisted?
Yes.
Okay. What was your specific job in the service?
Well, I went in as a medical technician and was assigned to a military hospital, and we were sent overseas. We went to France, landed in Le Havre, France, and that was some kind of a trip for me because I'd never been on a boat in my life, not even a rowboat. And there I was on a troop ship going across the North Atlantic, and naturally we got into a storm, and but we made it to Le Havre fine, and from Le Havre we set up somewhere in France.
So tell me a little bit more about your trip over the Atlantic. Did you ever have any U-boat scares or anything like that?
No, but it was rough, extremely rough, and my fear was I'd never even been on a rowboat, that I was going to get seasick. Well, it turned out I was one of the few that didn't, which was amazing to me.
So then you got to France, and then what was the first thing you did?
We set up a hospital up in middle France, just a regular general hospital, a field hospital. It wasn't like the Bamage Hospital or this hospital, but it was a field hospital, basically cots, and the patients came in. We had first aid stations out and about, and if somebody came into that first aid station, needed further treatment, they shipped them on to us, and we had them there.
So this wasn't on the front lines?
Oh no, it was behind the lines.
Okay. And what was everyday life like for you? Starting with, you wake up, what's the first thing you do?
Well, after we got overseas, first thing you do is go eat breakfast, and then whatever they tell you to do, or whatever happened over there. And sometimes it was nothing. Sometimes it was pretty busy. But we did what normally nurses do here. We took blood pressure, gave shots, intravenous, intramuscular, whatever was necessary, we did it. And we had no nurses, female nurses. we were called ward technicians. We weren't called nurses. Goodness. Okay.
So when you got to France and you were at this field hospital, do you remember what unit you were with there?
It was the 85th General Hospital, I think.
Okay.
But I don't remember the details. Most of that stuff I tried to forget. But we went on from there. When we moved up to right close to the German border, because we started taking in by that time the war ended, and the prison camps were liberated, and we got to take it in the prisoners, and we took the liberated prisoners in, and some of them were in needed help, and we did. Some needed extensive help, and we took care of them, shipped them on to England, and from England they came on home.
What did the prisoners look like when they came out of the camp?
Ragged and bedraggled, or whatever adjective you want to use. And they were, I know one particular instance when I've seen, we had plenty to eat. The hospital was, I guess, first class eating to be over there. And I remember seeing them come in, even though we had plenty of food and there was no danger of shortage, but they would still snitch bread and what have you and put it in the jacket pockets. And a lot of times it would stay in there until it molded, but they couldn't come to the realization that there's plenty of food. They just thought it was going to give out again. But they took a while for them to get over that.
And you told me yesterday about an incident when the storm came and the prisoner of war who had just been liberated. You want to tell that one?
We had our quarters at the field hospital was pup tents that were lined up outside the entrance to the hospital, and it came a thunderstorm one night, kind of a South Georgia thunderstorm. It was a sport, and I heard this. I was in my pup tent, but I heard this commotion, and outside in the mud and the slush and the rain, this soldier that had been liberated, prisoner, he was a liberated prisoner, he was out walking up and down, wringing his hands, basically crying, scared to death, and the thunder and lightning made him even worse. And he was inconsolable, you might say, for a good period of time. But it just showed how bad a situation he had been in, because he couldn't make himself believe that it was over, and he just kept trying to do it. But that was one instance I don't forget.
What did you do? I mean, as a medic, how did you handle that
situation?
We got
him into the hospital. We had plenty of help there, and we got him on into the hospital, and they sedated him. I'm sure I wasn't there when they sedated him. But there's another instance I didn't tell you about, kind of comical. But this is later on at Suga. You want to go into it now, or it kind of ties in, but it's a long ways in the future. We'll wait till we get to Japan.
All right. And you told me about when y'all were close to Luxembourg.
Yeah. We heard this music or something going on, and so a few of us more adventurous decided we'd see what was happening, and we went over and found ourselves in Luxembourg, and they were having some kind of a celebration, and they were having music, dancing, and it looked like the war had never touched them. It's just amazing to come out of beat up France into that situation where everything looked so serene and pretty, and the girls were dressed in very colorful outfits, and they were having a good time. Of course, it did us no good. We couldn't speak that language, so we just. They had ice cream. I remember that, and that was a treat for sure.
And that's something y'all didn't have in the military.
Oh no!
Right? They didn't give you ice cream.
Well, not under those circumstances. We did otherwise, but up on the battlefield, or used to be a battlefield, you didn't have them. And we weren't accustomed to it, so we enjoyed that. Took what few pleasures you could.
So then once you finished with the clearing company in France, then where'd you go from there?
They shipped us on down to Marseille, France, a select bunch, apparently, because we had 2 shiploads that loaded up in Marseille, and we went there on what is now called the 40 and 8s. I'm a bona fide member of the 40 and 8 club, and what that was, it would hold 40 men or 8 horses. And the place I slept, I think, had been occupied by a horse. But
these were boxcar trains,
yeah,
right?
They were just boxcars, yeah.
Okay.
And that thing rumbled, and the one that we was on, and it was a night trip. It had a flat place on the rail, or on one of the wheels, and it was a bump all night long, and some other things I won't tell, but we went on to that down to excuse me. Went on down to Marseille and loaded up on. They had two troop ships there, and they loaded us up on those troop ships. And
but they weren't ordinary troop ships, right?
They were apparently converted liners, because they were pretty well fixed. But for us, there's I guess you'd call them a ocean liner. But anyway, I've never wanted to go on a cruise since. But we sailed from Marseille on out into the North Atlantic again, instead of going north, we went south. And we went to the Panama Canal, went through the Panama Canal, and that was the only break we got. They let us get off in Panama, and we had some pineapple and what have you, and whatever fruits we could get. And we had a good time there, but we couldn't stay long. They had us back on the ship fairly quick. And the next day we got out into the Pacific. And the way they did that, as you probably know, you go in one level and they raise you up or let you down, whichever way you're going, and you get into the other ocean, and you pop out into the Pacific, and from there we were headed north again toward the Philippines. I always said, I didn't know it for sure, that what they were doing, they were staging to invade Japan. And fortunately, we about 500 miles to the south of the Philippines, they dropped this bomb on Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after that, and as you know, everything ceased. But we went on to the Philippines, and I stayed in the Philippines for a while, and we didn't do anything except training. But then I went to Atsugi, Japan, at Suga Air Base for the 608th Clearing Company. And our job there, we were a limited company, probably about 40 or 50 of us all. We lived good. They'd send in plenty of food for the clientele we was going to have, and if the clientele had left, we'd eat it. Then anyway, we didn't go hungry. And while I was there, we kept processing these people from the island of Japan that their condition warranted them to have medical treatment in the United States.
So they were American soldiers?
Yeah, American soldiers. If we didn't fool any further with any. We never did see a Japanese president. Never did. But we went on to that. If I don't get my facts right, I get a little ahead of myself sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Take your time.
But when we got into that process of getting those people in from different areas of Japan, we had to process them and get them ready to ship out again. And they flew them out, but I don't know if they flew them all the way to the United States or not, but they flew them out. And one day, this day stands out just like yesterday, this plane load came in, and we had a delegation that went out, you might say a delegation. A bunch of troops went out to get them. And I wound up, one of the last ones getting off the plane was a tall boy. He was taller than I was. And you could tell his mental capacities were limited. And he come off that plane, and he was about 6'4", I think. And he was taking steps about long from here to there. And there was a field out there that looked like a 40-acre field. He started out across that field, and there wasn't nobody left but me. And I knew I had to get him back somehow. And so I didn't know how I was going to do that because I was simply alone with him. And I ran out, got sight of him, and walked along in step, and then I started a conversation. I said, "Well, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going home." I said, "Sure enough?" Yeah, I'm going home. And I couldn't do nothing with him, so I pulled a trick on him. I got on his right side with my left side, and I just kept bearing into the left until I turned him completely around out there in that 40-acre field. And he walked right back to the plane. Of course, by then I had plenty of help to get him back in there and under treatment. But a lot of them was mental cases, and you had to be careful with them. And we did have some that I can't even describe here. And but we got to it. And it was interesting. And when I came on back, I decided when I sat there watching those people leaving on planes, I had 51 days on the water. You can see it on my service record. And I said, I have had enough sailing time for an Army boy. And so I arranged, I said, they got to have a medic on the plane. So I arranged to be a medic on the plane coming home. And from that, excuse me, we got on there on the plane, and we kind of island hopped to Hawaii. We went to Guam first, Kwajalein next, and I don't know if he picked up others there or what, because I wasn't flying the plane. I was I was just looking at the folks on it, and went on to Hawaii, and that was our last stop to go ahead and get ready to come on to the United States. And so we loaded up and debarked or flew off, and we got about 2 hours, an hour or two out. Now we didn't have no jets. We had a prop planes. They were big ones, but they had propeller driven, and we got out. I don't know how far, but it was too far to go. Keep going, and the oil pressure dropped in one of the engines, and of course they decided to take us back to Hawaii, and I don't remember if we changed planes or if we let them. We was over there overnight, and then we'd loaded up again, and that time it was about 6 or 7 hours, I believe, if I'm remembering right. I'm not going to swear by it, but we flew nonstop into San Francisco, and from then I wiggled and hitchhiked and beat my way home.
What was the reception like in San Francisco? Was there a crowd there when you got off the plane?
No. We were just passengers getting off the plane. It wasn't like being in Baltimore. Baltimore, we got treated royally. I mean royally. But in San Francisco, we were just passengers. And of course, that's all we were, really, was passengers. But Uncle Sam was paying the bill.
So you got home, and that was the end of your military service?
Well, I stayed in the National Guard for a while, but
okay.
That was the end of my military service. Then I got trying to make a living.
What was your most memorable experience throughout your entire military service?
Gosh, I don't know. I think that time in France probably was, because it was so beat up, and but I don't recall anything spectacular except going to Luxembourg. I thought that was rather neat.
You said France was beat up. What kind of things did you see?
Oh, bomb craters, and they had something they called the infantry had a time getting across some kind of bunker-like things, and we getting across them was bad, but they didn't give us any trouble. By that time we got there, everything gotten pretty well straightened out. But the trip up to and every time we had to if you ever pull up sometime field hospitals on your computer, and you'll see what some of them look like. They was like the Boy Scouts wouldn't have had them, but that's all we had. And it was an experience.
What was the toughest thing you ever had to do in the service?
Gosh, I don't know of anything that I just really had to do that I didn't feel like I could make it. I had to go across a minefield one time that they told us very possibly, it was in France, that the Germans had very possibly mined it, but we had to cross it, and I wasn't a good toss, but I picked me out old tall boy. He was we called him a fatalist. He said, what will be, will be. And so he started out, and I just got behind him, and he didn't get blowed up, so I didn't either.
Did you ever go on leave or anything? Did you ever come back home after you
Oh
went
yeah,
overseas?
yeah. Not many times, but I'd hitchhike mostly. Back then you could hitchhike anywhere. Military personnel could. And even after the military, I'd hitchhike.
How did you cope with being away from your family for so long?
It just had to be. So that's up. It didn't particularly bother me that bad. And I had an older brother that was in France, and he and I decided later that we were in France at the same time, but Lord knows where. He was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he went through some difficult times, very much so. And I had, mine was kind of like a walk in the park, and if you want to look at it that way. But you're away from home, but you know you're not going to go back, so why worry about it? You just take it as it is. Well, I didn't ever worry about it. I might be different.
You have any more interesting stories you want to tell?
No, I don't. I think we pretty well covered them all, Christian. I appreciate you going over them. You might have to delete some of them. I don't know. But my memory gets a little foggy in my age. And I may not have everything in sequence, but it's because you don't remember it, you don't talk about it, you don't have anybody to discuss it with you. And I remember mostly after I got out and into business and got over here, got in Georgia. I came over here in 1952 and have been here ever since. Married a charming Miller County girl. And best thing that ever happened to me.
All right. Well, on behalf of the Military Education Preservation Project, I'd like to thank you for your service, first of all. And thank you for your time and your willingness to share your experiences with us.
Well, you're welcome.